Hi everyone again. I'm going to have to start all over again with lecture two, which I spent a very large amount of time last night recording, and I don't know what happened. It was in the process of um buffering it or processing it or something, and then it seems to have just dropped it. So, and it even gave me the link and everything, but it didn't work. So here we go again. Um, this has not been a fun month, um, at all with communication problems in any way, shape, or form. And also, suddenly in the past 2 weeks, none of the keys, and it's not electronic keys, it's actual physical old-fashioned keys, like suddenly they've all stopped working in the old-fashioned dorm that we're having to work in right now. So that's been fun too. All right, so I'm going to share my screen. Okay. So we're going to go through to open a new presentation. Where is a recent one? Why can't I find? Okay. Downloads. Nope, not that. So many downloads I have to go through. Sorry, this is really disorganized. I should have had this queued up. Let me just do a open recent. Um, so we did intro to classification, I think, with the last lecture. Okay, so we're going to talk about LC classification. And so the LC call numbers are composed of two main parts. So there's the class number, which consists of 2 to 3 letters and usually 1 to 4 digits, which may include a decimal number or even a cutter number, indicating a further subdivision of the topic. And then there's the book number, which consists of a cutter number plus a date of publication. And so this is an example of an LC call number. So you have the class number here and then the book number. So the main entry and then the date of publication. So the class number is a number that represents the subject or form of an item being cataloged selected from a classification schedule. It is always placed in the subfield A of MARC fields 050 or 090. So here's an 090 being used, and then you have with no indicators, and then you have the class number, and then you have this subject heading. And so that class number here, if you were to put that into ClassWeb, you would probably come up with this subject heading. Okay, and then there's two easy ways to determine the class number. So you could copy the first subject heading and paste it into ClassWeb. So it's no longer classification web, it's ClassWeb. They shortened it, so that hyperlinked no longer works. So we've got so here is a suggestion that you could look for the LC subject headings, but really the only option for that right now anymore is browse. And then in the search box, then you type the subject heading with a subdivision, you could do that. And then if you get no matches, then you can drop the subdivision. And then from the list, then you pick out your subject heading and then directly beneath it actually directly beneath it is no longer the call number. I'll have to show you how that works. And if none, then you click on the radio button next to it and then you choose the class correlation. And then you pick from the list the number where the description most closely fits your subject. So, you copy the first subject heading and you paste it into the other option is to copy the first subject heading and paste it into a subject browse search in the Library of Congress online catalog, where you will see a list of subject headings in a browse display, and you click on the one that matches your subject. And this will bring up a list of bibliographic records that have some subject headings in them, and you would that are similar to that or the same. And then you'll see what class number the Library of Congress assigns most often. And then you want to always copy and paste that number into ClassWeb as a double check. So for example, here you have you're using an 050 or the LC class number instead of an 090, and an indicator, first indicator is blank and the second indicator is 4, meaning it's an other library than the Library of Congress. And then you have ND 546 and the subfield B, etc. But we're focusing on the ND 546. And then if you look down at the 650, then that correlates with the painting French 17th century. And here you have ND 237.C6747, and apparently that correlates with Kondo, George subfield V exhibitions. So in a 600.10 subject heading, 6XX fields are all subject or genre headings. And so that means that this is like an individual being used like a subject heading. And so this is about this individual artist or whatever. And the subfield for him is the exhibitions. So this is probably an exhibition book or catalog. And that was the exhibition, and it was written by Thomas Keline, and he was probably the curator as well. The book number is comprised of two parts, the Cutter number and the date of publication. So note that in the 050 field or the 090 field that the book number always follows subfield B. So here it's, after this, this class number of NB615, you have a subfield B, and the .M54, that is your book number with the 2008. And then the Cutter number is based on the main entry, author or title, and is formulated by using the LC Cutter table, CSM G63 on Cataloger's desktop. But actually, you can just Google that. That's a lot easier than trying to find it on Cataloger's desktop. Sometimes Cutter numbers are based on divisions given in tables under the class number, so be sure to read through the divisions carefully, and when confused on how to use the tables, examine some books using that class number in the Library of Congress online catalog. This will often clear up any confusion on how the tables are to be used. The date is not very complicated. It's usually the date of publication. If you have any questions in assigning a date, go to the G14 dates. So let's look really quickly at that. So I'm just going to Google that, G14 date. Okay, so I'm going to go into a browser. I'm going to Google that. G140 dates, Library of Congress. Okay, so here it is. So this is going to be a PDF. Okay. So it says this was done, first started in 1982. It talks about like adding the date to the call number of all monographic works. So it's got all of this information here. So here's how you do this. So here's how do you do 2012? Use 2012. How do you do MMX? Use 2010. How do you do 2011 if it's expressed in square brackets? Use just 2011 without the square brackets. How do you do 2008 in square brackets with a question mark? Use 2008, etc., 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 etc. You got to go through the whole thing. I mean, really, I mean, you could definitely read through it if you'd like to, but usually we refer to these things when it comes up as a question when you're looking at something. Because if you were to read through all the documentation of everything that ever was, then it's impossible. So that's why we look these things up, usually when it comes up. Um, so anyway, I'll go back to the PowerPoint. Um, and then here is the cutter following the subfield B, S26. So this was taken from the name Sanday, Sanday, S26. So how did we get that? All right, so let's look up a cutter table. So if I Google cutter table, well, you can use the official one. You can print this out. Actually, this one's not too bad because they put this up here for, yeah, this one's better than the actual PDF that they have because that one's 2 pages and it breaks right in the middle of the cutter table. So if you print it out, it's useless. I mean, it's not helpful because what you do is you print this out and you pin it up next to your computer because you have to refer to it all the time. But in any case, this is how it works. All right. Let's say that I am using the name Sanday. Sanday. Okay. I'm going to put it over here, right? Sanday. Okay, so how are we going to do this, right? So Sanday, that's the name Sanday. So if after initial vowel, we have to go through the first row first. Is S an A? I mean, does it start with a letter A? No. Does it start with a letter E? No. Does it start with a letter I? No. Does it start with a letter O? No. Does it start with a letter U? No. Okay. So we go to the next row. Does it start with the letter S? Yes. Okay. So we know that it starts with the letter S. So since it starts with the letter S, for the second letter, then we can use, and since we have an A for the second letter, we can use the number 2. Now we don't usually get to use the number 2 because almost everything, unless it's a B or something, I guess, after a vowel, uses a 3 if it's an A. So A's rarely get a 2 if it's the second letter or something. But in this case, we can use a 2. So it's an S and a 2. And then what happens if we go down to the second row? Well, this is asking for initial letters Q, U. So we have to go down to the fourth row for initial letters QA or QT. So we got to go down to the fifth row for expansion for the letter. So the next letter is N. So we've got an S and a 2. So for the letter N, we have a 6. Okay. And a lot of times, I mean, it's going to be you're going to have to look at what the shelf list is. So you're going to have to figure out how that works with your particular organization and how it's going to fit in your shelf list. But a lot of times you'll have to use more than 2 numbers. So the next letter in this case would be 3. But if we go back to our PowerPoint, this is using just S26. So .S26, and then 2007 is the year of the book. I mean, is the year that the book was published. So here we've got this whole classification is probably related to excavations, Turkey, Amorium guidebooks. So then but because you have the dot A56 here, then we're not going to put another dot here. It's just L54. So L, and then I guess that the 5 and the 4 are an I and a G. I guess that we could look at that. L. So we here again, Lightfoot. Lightfoot. We got an L, so it's not a vowel, it's not an S, it's not a QU, it's not a QA or QT, but it is a consonant. So after the first initial consonant for the second letter, you're going to use the number, and you got an I, so you're going to use 5. And then the next one is a G. So then G is a 4. So you got 4. So we go back down here, and it does have L54. So we'll go ahead and do that, play from the current slide. And then this is a conference proceeding, so I'm guessing that this whole thing is like a classification for conference proceedings for this classification. So the A519 is probably Anatolian, comes off of Anatolian. And then now this one's weird. This is English translation of an Italian book. So if we take dot G5513, dot GG G5513, and we look up either Georgie, who is actually the author, or the translator, who is Jamanco. We need to see how that works out. It should probably be the author, but we want to see what the thinking is behind that. So if we go back here and look at this cutter, so we've got G, we have to go all the way back down to here to initial consonants. So we got G, and then the second letter for the author is an I, so that's dot G I. And then we got O, which is 6. So if you're doing the translator, you've got dot G, and then is it Jamanco? I think it is Jamanco. Okay, so whoever did this one was thinking of making it a G5513 instead of a G56. So maybe it fit in with their shelf list better, but it probably should be G56 something. But they made it a G55. So that's something to consider as well. So then here's one where this is what's called a serial. So this is an annual report, and a lot of the time when you look up what the classification should be for something like art and periodicals, it's just going to end with A3. You don't put a date on this because the date, it's a continuing resource, so the date changes all the time. So that's why it looks like that. Here you have the history of a museum cataloged under the author, so that makes sense. And that's the end of that slideshow. Okay, so now we're going to go into class web. And I just want to show you guys what we were going to do about this biography of Colleen Dewhurst, okay? So somebody asked about that. Okay, so that it's a very tricky one of the questions. And the reason for that is because it's what is a P classification. And P classifications are very complicated because um, P covers all kinds of literature and poetry and things. And sometimes you will have something that's sort of like a collection of things. So that's easy. Like then you can just find something that just covers, well, this is just supposed to be poetry about cowboys or something. So you can just easily find a classification for that, right? P something or other. Or this is supposed to be something about this kind of cinema. So it'll be like a PN something very specific. But if you're looking for something that's like by Ernest Hemingway, then it's going to be a very specific call number. And the reason for that is because Ernest Hemingway is assigned a very specific call number that's only for him. And it starts with a PS. So for example, like I'll show you, if I'm going to look for like American literature, okay? So American literature, if we just go into PS, so here's American literature. American literature, this gets really involved. All right, let me just put in classification of like, say, PS 3901. Let's see what that looks like. Okay. All right, I kind of got into it. Okay. So here's American literature individual authors, and that's where you get into trouble. Okay. If you get into American literature individual authors, where did I go? So here's where you get into it. So here's colonial period, 19th century. Then you have 1900 to 1960, 1961 to 2000, 2001. So there are a lot of people who have them already signed, but if you have somebody who doesn't have one already signed, then you have to assign it. But also what's complicated is you can't officially assign it unless you have the clearance with basically the Library of Congress, that you have like what's called NACO authority. So it's like the national, wait, what does NACO stand for again? Dang it. National, all right, NACO authority file. All right. So NACO is Name Authority Cooperative Program of the PCC. Have NACO clearance, you need to go and undergo training for like 3 years. So everybody who's a cataloger at the Library of Congress gets that, but then once they clear it and whatever, or actually once they go through Library of Congress training, even though they may have already cataloged for 20 years, they still have to go through Library of Congress training and they treat you like you don't know how to catalog. But they give everybody like NACO clearance. So every Library of Congress cataloger can just create authorities. As they need to. But it's very hard for your average everyday cataloger to do that because they don't have the authority to do that. So what is an authority? Let me just show you this really quick. So this is the Library of Congress authorities. So An authority is, somebody is like a person or a subject heading. So a Library of Congress subject heading is authorized. And like, you know, a name authority is authorized. So if you want to look up, say, I don't know. Actually, what's really hilarious is that not only does obviously Thomas Jefferson have an authority, but I think his ghost might. So like let's look up Jefferson Thomas Spirit. Is it Spirit? Who else has a spirit? There's like actual authorities for like ghosts of famous people. This is a whole thing. Like somebody like that, like this was supposedly okay, I guess Thomas Jefferson doesn't have a spirit. Who does have a spirit? I may have to Google that. Um, Presidents with authorized spirits. I'm not kidding. No, I don't need to know their drinking history. I need to know who has a spirit. Spirit of, okay. Well, I'm not kidding. This is like a whole thing. Like, this is like, the spirit of so and so came to me and told me that, like, he, like this, whatever famous president, um, all right, I'm just gonna say ghost because they're thinking. It's presidents with authorized ghosts in the authority. Maybe Lincoln. I should try Lincoln. Okay, let me try Lincoln. Okay, new search. Lincoln Abraham spirit. What? Come on. Well, anyway, okay. Well, we don't have to look for ghosts right now, but it's a thing. I mean, really, seriously, it's a whole thing. Okay. But here, I mean, here, like, okay, so if you go through all of these, here's somebody actually who is officially named Abe Lincoln. It's not Abraham. But if you look through if you just glance through an entire list of things in the name authority file, which is the NAF, um, this says authorized heading, but this says references. This says authorized heading, authorized heading. So if you click on something that has references, then it may not actually be like it's probably cross-listed. It may not actually be that. So you have to click on what says the authority record. So you got to click on this hyperlink here, and this is the authority. It's actually Lincoln, comma, Luther H, comma, 1914. So I'm going to click on that, and here's that. Here's the whole record. So an authority record is different from a bib record. So authority record has a bunch of different fields, like all these 670s and 400s and whatever that are not in a bibliographic record. So, and the way, like if you're going to put this in a 100 field, you need to stop it. You need to copy it. Oh my God. You need to copy exactly like this out of the 100 field, like that. Copy and paste it exactly as it is. I mean, obviously, this delimiter is probably not going to work in OCLC or in whatever your ILS is. You need to have a $1 sign or $2 signs if you're in Alma, or you need to have like a different kind of delimiter sign, so that it doesn't freak out on you. And we'll work with that a little bit more later. But anyway, so I hope that that helps. Um, okay. So the reason why I was talking about that is because when you're dealing with this literature stuff, they're going to have not only an authority, but then you're also going to assign like this class number to them. Um, Hi, that's Clotilde. Yes, you're ridiculous. You want to say hi to everyone? hmm She's a kitten pants. So when you look at the American literature, you get in the so you have the colonial period, right? And if you go through that colonial period, and then you have the 19th century, and then you have all these things, blah, bitty, blah, bitty, blah, bitty, blah, 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 blah. But then when you get to 20th century, then it gets really complicated. So we'll play with some of those a little bit later. But that said, like let's say we've got this Halleck Fitz Green person whom I have never heard of, but oh, he has this whole range. So he has this whole range of work. So he has like not only PS 1780 is his call number, but apparently PS 1783 is also his call number. I think maybe. Oh no, well maybe it's PS. I don't know. Anyway, we can talk more about it. And also, if you guys want to talk more about it, you can also make an appointment with me. But let me see if I'm still recording. Am I still recording? Yes, hopefully I am. Am I still recording? Yes, it looks like I'm still recording. Okay, so the reason why I mentioned this is because when it comes to Ms. Colleen Dewhurst, aka Mrs. What's his name? The great actor. I mean, she was a great actress too. Um, the guy who played Patton, in case well, I don't know if any of you guys know these things. I mean, you were probably not born when they both died. Sorry. What was his name? Who's the guy who played Patton? Who played Patton? George C. Scott. She was married to George C. Scott like twice. She married George C. Scott, and they had Campbell Scott. Maybe you guys know Campbell Scott. And then they got divorced, and then they're like those people who got married again. But anyway, I know her because of the Anne of Green Gables stuff, like the good Anne of Green Gables stuff. And if you guys don't know the good Anne of Green Gables stuff, then you really should. So the reason why, so we're not going to look under the subject heading browse name, but we're going to look under names in ClassWeb. And we're going to go Dewhurst Colleen. And then we're going to go under class correlation. And here she is. So she has her own call number. And lo and behold, it's a P call number because P's are complicated. But also, she doesn't have a PS, even though, well, actually, I think she was Canadian. But she might still have a PS call number if she was a Canadian writer. But she wasn't a writer, she was a screen actor, and actually I think she was a stage actor as well. But she has a PN call number because she's a screen or whatever, or stage actor. So this whole thing is her call number. If I click on it, oh, yeah, okay. So yeah, so there's a whole bunch of this is a whole range of individuals, A to Z, but also you have to kind of like pick out of that range of things when you have to assign something. But we don't have to assign it because she has an authorized she has this call number or classification. So I'm gonna type this in here, Colleen Dewhurst, but also it has to be a biography of her. Why did they have to make this yellow against white? I mean, that's like, and they've been doing this for years, and it's like the worst design decision ever. It's bad for everyone, but it's impossible if people are colorblind, and a lot of people are. But also it needs to be like a biography of her. So I'm just going to go into this little thing and look into LC bibliographic lookup. So okay, so what's the first record we have here? This is this number here, just so you know. Oh, stop it, you stupid computer. This number here, this 9700588, 03. This is actually an LCCN. It's a Library of Congress. LCCN. I mean, it's a Library of Congress control number. So it's a unique number that's assigned to every record they create. And it starts with the last two digits of the year it was created. So this was created in 1997. That was before they were using like four digits because, it was before the Y2K crisis. I don't know if you guys, well, maybe you guys have read about it or studied it or something, and maybe some of you guys remember it, but I don't know if any of you do. But hey, shout out if you do. And um, so the Y2K crisis was a situation right before the turn from 1999 to 2000 where everybody was freaking out that like the whole world was going to shut down. Um, because, it was like, oh no, like I mean, some people really were like, I mean, really, what's that word? Prepping. They were preppers before they were called preppers. Everybody was freaking out. I was freaking out. I lived in New York City that time too. And I went and stayed with a friend of mine because and like kind of camped out there because we didn't know what was going to literally happen overnight. And what was weird is she lived near Times Square, but we were like freaked out about going to Times Square. But then her niece decided she was going to go to Times Square. It was very weird. Anyway, um, okay. But this one is not going to work because this is by Colleen Dewhurst and it's her autobiography with the ghostwriter. So that's not going to work because we're looking for a biography. Um, on the other hand, I think I think that we may want this number, but I'm not sure. And then this, what else do we have? All the Way Home. Oh, this is a collective biography. So that's actually a collective biography is a whole different thing. So you would look up it's like a PN call number, and it's like you'd assign it to a book that's a collective biography of very specific things, like a collective biography of stage actors or a collective biography of film actors, and with specific details depending. So, but I think that what we would probably do is we're probably just going to be using her call number, and I think that this is the one. So, yeah, I think that that's the right answer for the question. What's the question? The question is, right. Oh, yeah, I pasted this in when I was talking about this last night. A biography of Colleen Dewhurst, and I think that this is the right answer. Um, we probably don't even need the H6. It would just basically be this. Um, and then because it's not asking for anything else and because we have no other details, then it's going to be that. We can't put a cutter in there because we don't have the author's name and we don't have the title. Therefore, and the cutter is the book number, remember? So we can't even put that in. I mean, in later assignments, we'll have things like, would probably have to put something like this, but like, what is this asking for? I don't remember. I mean, saying, yeah, so just provide an appropriate ELSI classification number. So that's it. That's the ELSI classification number. But I mean, the additional information would be this. You wouldn't even really have to put the subfields because this is what you get from ClassWeb, actors/United States/biography. That's what it is. But if you put it into an actual MARC record, this is what you put, just so you know what it looks like. This is what you put in a 650 field. 650, and then these are your indicators. You have a blank first indicator and 0 second indicator. And the reason you have a 0 second indicator is because all this information comes from the Library of Congress. So this is technically subfield A, but you don't have subfield A in most um, ILSs. It's just, the A gets dropped, but it is subfield A. It's actors, and then subfield Z, United States for the locale or whatever, and then subfield V, which is like formatter, kind of like genre format, for a subfield of this, specifically of a 650 field biography. So I hope that that answers that question. What else is there? Let me see and what else there is. And I'm going to stop share for just a second. Oh my God, I just realized that I completely lopped off my head, but hopefully you weren't looking at me. I have this like word that I had cut out that says discretion, and then it fell. So I need to fix it. But I also haven't really outfitted this room exactly. I kind of need to hang things up. Okay. And then what else do I need to do? I need to mm, 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 mm. Let me see here. Okay, that's not it. Just look at other bookmarks here. There we go. Okay, and what else for this week? Total classification. So we have the cutter thing. Yeah, I mean, so for right now, that's what we need to do is really this assignment and really work with class web. So please let me know if you can't get into class web. And then I'm going to upload, I will upload a PDF of the LC cutter table. Okay. But it's probably easier if you Google it because then you don't have like the break right in the middle of the PDF. Okay, so I think that's it, and hopefully this will work. So I will see you guys online and get things together for lecture 3 so that you have those readings and so forth, at least the readings to begin with. All right, see you soon.